Press the Let's Go Live button, so let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet. We may have had a little bit of an event scheduling error over on YouTube, so you might have to refresh over there and then we'll fix it up after the show. We're trying some new ways to connect the tubes here on the platforms all across the fruited plain of the internet to kind of be like a professional person, but sometimes I don't know what I'm doing. And it looks like, yeah, so YouTube is back over there. That's great. We got that one figured out. How we doing on Rumble? Locals looks good. John Allen's over there. Cool guys in the house. We see. All right, good. We're good on Telegram. All right. We're figuring it out today, which is, it's a Monday. But it's working, which is tremendous news. We've got a lot to get to, so let's get to it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun deep in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. And today we are talking about closings. We have some serious closings that are going on. One being Tucker Carlson. Holy moly, we caught this as it was breaking today on our members-only morning stream at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And we made a video about it this morning that went out earlier on YouTube. If you missed that, check that out. But we're going to dive into it a little bit deeper today because I actually dug the clip up from when Fox News announced this departure. We have questions about whether this is Dominion lawsuit related, maybe not. We have several clips from Tucker, and he's been exhibiting new behavior lately. He's been doing things like interviews. And so I grabbed a couple clips. One, when he was over on YouTube, there's a Full Send podcast. They had a great conversation with him. And then we've got a clip from Tucker when he was here over the weekend talking about truth. And I was thinking to myself, as I was listening to this, I've been listening to his podcast for a while, or his guest appearances. Is this new behavior? Is this foreboding a prognostication of things to come? AOC, Chuck Schumer, they're getting their wish. They have wanted Tucker Carlson banned for a long time. And so he is no longer at Fox News. And then I wanted to share with you the final clip, the final exit, the final Tucker Carlson minute or two, where he actually was enjoying a nice piece of pizza. And if you don't know what was on this pizza, well, this is going to be a lot of fun, especially you pineapple pizza people. So we're going to get into that all in the first Tucker Carlson segment and talk about it because it could be the end of Fox News as far as I'm concerned. So we'll go through all of that. And then, boy, we've got some serious heavy lifting to do. In closing arguments, Roger Parloff, Proud Boys trial, day 61. And my goodness, there's over like 300 tweets here, okay? We're talking about closing arguments. Prosecutors, very long-winded individuals, they were talking, and then we get and go into the defense closing arguments. And remember, there are 5 co-defendants, so we're going to have a lot of closing arguments. And there was a lot of it today, and so we will go quickly through this tweet thread because there's over 300 tweets. And my friends, as you can see, there's a lot to get to today. And if you want to be a part of the show, the best place to do that is by joining us, our amazing community. It's growing every day. You can become a member. It's really the best way to support the show here. Join us on Locals, join us on YouTube, and ultra mega shout out to our friend Dolphin Fan, who, as usual, on the prior thread, actually gifted 5 new members and invited them over to our amazing community. And so whether you join on YouTube or you join on Locals, we do member-only streams. We have a lot of fun. We did one this morning. We do ones basically 6 days a week. And so come and check it out if you want some extra content. And if you're watching the segments on YouTube and you're wondering where those segments come from, they are from our live session. So come and join us. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com or click the join button on YouTube. Now, as we talked about, we've got a lot to get into today. And the only way we can properly do that is if we are properly fortified and nutrified, courtesy of our friends over at fieldofgreens.com. Because look, I know that you know, and I know that you know that you know, and you know that I know that we all know it. Everybody knows it. We'd all like to lose some of those leftover pandemic pounds. It's true. But how sick are you of all the ads for weight loss pills, fad diets, and all that stuff? You've been there. We've all done it. They don't work. But you know what does? Eating healthy, especially 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. You do that, the weight would probably just fall right off. So look, vegetables, not a fan. Who's got time to prepare the fruit every day? Instead, let's talk about Field of Greens. Now, Field of Greens is a science-backed formula, very specific fruits and vegetables you won't find in any other product. Metabolic blends, antioxidant blends, tons of great stuff in there because proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so you can burn calories faster and lose weight the healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand backed by a better health promise. Yes, you're going to look healthier and feel healthier fast, but the greater proof is going to come at your next checkup when your doctor says, wow, you've lost weight. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. And so let's get you started. 15% off your first order. And it's not just Field of Greens. They've got weight stuff, although this is good for that. There's weight stuff. There is sleep stuff. There is joint stuff, all at fieldofgreens.com. Use code Robert to save 15% off. The vegetables want to be eaten. It's real organic superfood, and you're going to love it. Check it out, fieldofgreens.com, and don't forget to use code Robert. All right, so let's get into it now, my friends, because there is some serious business to attend to. Tucker Carlson is out at Fox News. Some people wondering if he was issuing warnings, if he was out on interviews talking about the problems with the media, maybe forecasting something that was going to be coming in his world. We're going to go through a couple clips from him, but I wanted to start off with how Fox News announced this. We were all waking up. It's a Monday morning, a busy week ahead. Gosh, I can't wait to watch Tucker Carlson tonight after my busy, grueling day at work. Unfortunately, Tucker Carlson's not going to be there anymore, and he's not even going to be getting an exit show, a final countdown, nothing to even say goodbye. Fox News announced this on their network today.
We have some news from within our Fox family. Fox News Media
Smaller family
and
now.
Tucker Carlson have mutually agreed to part ways. Tucker's last show was this past Friday. And starting tonight, Fox News Tonight will air live at 8 p.m. Eastern. It will be an interim show with rotating Fox News personalities until a new host is named. We want to thank Tucker Carlson for his service to the network as a host and prior to that as a long-term contributor.
That's it? No Tucker goodbye? That's it? He was number one over there in a major demo. I think 5 was actually the number one highest show, but I think he had a certain demo. He was killing it. He was crushing it. And that's it. I guess that's it. You're done. You're out of here. So that felt a little bit weird, felt a little bit unsatisfactory. And people are wondering what actually happened here. There was a source that made their way over to Axios, and here's what they tell us about it. They said that they have agreed to part ways. And if you read the statement, basically the official written statement that came out from Fox was essentially what Ms. Faulkner just read to us. Carlson's last program, April 21st, we're going to watch the final exit segment from him. A source familiar with the situation told Axios that the firing was not a part of the settlement agreement. We were wondering about that. Was this material? But if Tucker Carlson was fired from Fox and that ever leaked out and Fox News was discovered to have fired their top anchor because Dominion told him to, that would, I think, even be more catastrophic than this. A slew of material was uncovered during pretrial discovery that apparently implicated Carlson, they say. More information could be that it was legally damaging as there are more cases coming. Former Fox News producer suing the network. That was a long time ago, or that came, I think, in March, but seems like it might be unrelated. Private text messages. Carlson pressed to get a fellow Fox News reporter fired for fact-checking a tweet, they say. Carlson didn't respond to comment. So the show is going to be airing tonight. Don't even know what it is or what's going to be airing in the time slot. Dominion's not commenting on this. Harris Faulkner confirmed it. That's it. So again, man, still very little additional details about this. A lot of rumors, but not a lot confirmed. We had yesterday, Ray Epps was on with 60 Minutes spinning his yarn about whatever, reality he's living in. And the rest of us are thinking maybe that had something to do with this. Was Tucker Carlson waking up today about to obliterate Ray Epps? Say, oh yeah, nice little 60 Minutes bit there. How about I respond to you on my show, 60 Minutes? And maybe they cut that off. They said, no, not so fast there, buddy boy. We don't want to hear any of that stuff. So there was a lot to unpack here. We don't know exactly what happened, but there was a lot of new talk, new behavior from Carlson that maybe has not been sitting well with some of these Fox News people. Here's Tucker.
You wonder just how filthy and dishonest our news media are.
Filthy.
You'll be in the shower and you'll think they're bad, but how bad are they? Well, here's one measure of their badness. You can try this at home. Ask yourself, Is any news organization you know of so corrupt that it's willing to hurt you on behalf of its biggest advertisers?
All of them?
Anyone who do that is obviously Pablo Escobar level corrupt and should not be trusted.
All of them probably would do that. I mean, if the fee is high enough, they'll take it. How long did we have to live with brought to you by Pfizer everywhere we turn? Brought to you by Pfizer, brought to you by Pfizer, brought to you by Pfizer, all over the place. So they'll take the money for sure. So, all right, that is what Tucker Carlson is talking about there. Now, a lot of people in the Democratic media are getting their wish. A couple Democrat politicians have been calling for the banning of Tucker Carlson. This was AOC on with Jen Psaki. You remember her. She left the White House as the former press secretary and went right into MSNBC because that's what they do. But here they are talking about the censorship and the censoring of a journalist. Jen Psaki happens to be a journalist, I think is what she's calling herself now. I don't know. But they are openly nodding and yucking it up like this is some kind of a joke to put Tucker Carlson off the air because he's offensive to AOC.
Federal regulation in terms of what's allowed on air and what isn't. And when you look at what Tucker Carlson and some of these other folks on Fox do, it is very, very clearly incitement of violence. Very clearly incitement of violence.
So anything you say is incitement of violence now. Do you see how quickly this little line in the sand moves? Goes from actual incitement, an imminent threat that is going to be actually acted upon would be an incitement to violence. You know, there's legal standards for this. Now Tucker Carlson opining, sharing his opinion on his cable news station is now literal incitement of violence according to this smooth brain.
And that is the line that I think we have to be willing to contend with.
Yeah, great point. Gosh, you're so brilliant. Psaki, you're a journalist, you know. You're going to be next. These people are never going to stop where they are currently. You're a friendly right now, but as soon as they want to start, well, we'll leave it at that. Anyways, you get the point. So that's Jen Psaki. That's her new show, her and AOC. Where are they at? Was that like by a bay or something? That's pretty nice. What are they doing? Let's see. Where are they at? Oh, yeah, that's really nice. Okay. So beautiful. Now, AOC's not alone. She's got this guy, Chuck Schumer, who is also salivating or has been salivating for this. It's a scary thing to think about. Are actual politicians calling for the censorship of journalists in America? But it's happening more and more frequently. If they are not outright calling for it openly in the halls of Congress or in little sit-down interviews with Jen Psaki, then they're doing it surreptitiously through the FBI and censorship and algorithmic changes, or they just deplatform you. Just like they're trying to do now with Tucker Carlson. He got deplatformed from Fox News.
These lies continue tonight. Rupert Murdoch, who has admitted they were lies and said he regretted it, has a special obligation to stop Tucker Carlson from going on tonight now that he's seen how he has perverted and slimed the truth, and from letting him go on again and again and again. Not because their views deserve such opprobrium, but because our democracy depends on it.
Gosh, our democracy depends on censoring people, on obliviating them off of the airwaves. They don't like their arguments, which is why they try to remove them, because they can't compete with the arguments, quite frankly. If they could, they would offer better arguments, but they don't do that. They would rather just censor their political opponents and throw them off of the internet. In this case, Fox News is doing that with Tucker, and the question is why. Certainly more will be revealed. But over the last couple of months, Tucker Carlson has been exhibiting new behavior. You know, normally he's been my experience has been he's been a closed individual, somebody who does his show, doesn't do a lot of interviews, and mostly keeps to himself, right? Produces his show, will occasionally go do speeches here and there, but is mostly a private person. And over the last couple months, Tucker Carlson has been doing podcasts, been doing interviews, been doing shows. He was on with the Redacted guys who do a great job. He was on with the Full Send podcast. He was speaking at Heritage. And I wanted to share a couple of these clips because it feels like Tucker is going through something, maybe, or he's just had enough of this current environment, this current media situation. And here he is. This is on the Full Send podcast. Tucker Carlson. This, of course, is on YouTube. This is a great interview if you want to listen to the full thing. Very fascinating to hear the other side of Tucker. But this was just a clip from them where Tucker is explaining how the media is working now and what it feels like to be inside.
Like, I've spent my whole life in the media. My dad was in the media. Like, that is a big part of the revelation that's changed my life, is the media are part of the control apparatus. Like, there's no, yeah, I know. Cause you're younger and smarter and you're like, yeah. But what if you're me and you spent your whole life in that world, and to look around and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow. Not only are they part of the problem, but I spent most of my life being part of the problem, defending the Iraq war. Like, I actually did that. Can you imagine if you did that?
Well, what do you think? What is one of your biggest regrets in your career?
Oh, defending the Iraq war.
That is it?
Well, I've had a million regrets, not being more skeptical, calling people names when I should have listened to what they were saying. Look, when someone makes a claim, there's only one question that's important at the very beginning, which is the claim true or not? So I say, you committed murder or you rigged the last election. Before you attack me as a crazy person for saying that, maybe you should explain whether you did it or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for too long, I participated in the culture where I was like, anyone who thinks outside these pre-prescribed lanes is crazy, is a conspiracy theorist. And I just really regret that. I'm ashamed that I did that. And partly it was age, partly it was the world that I grew up in. So when you look at me and you're like, yeah, of course they're part of the means of control, I'm like, that's obvious to you because you're 28, but I just didn't see it at all. And I'm ashamed of that.
Isn't that what the media tries to do, though?
It's their only purpose.
They're
not here to inform you. Really? Even on the big things that really matter, like the economy and war and COVID and like things that really matter that will affect you. No, their job is not to inform you. They are working for the small group of people who actually run the world. Oof. They're their servants. They're their Praetorian Guard. And we should treat them with maximum contempt because they have earned it.
Maximum contempt because they have earned that. And certainly, without meaning it, there's a bunch of people in Fox News. It's a giant organization. That's a giant media conglomerate with a bunch of true believers in the media, with a bunch of people who were responsible for a bunch of those narratives, a bunch of people who drafted those memos and sent them out to all the anchors. This is what we're talking about today. These are what you can say. These are what you cannot say. He's been a part of it for the last however many years. And as COVID, I think, has emerged, many of us are realizing that a lot of what we just accepted to be true, a lot of the good faith that we attributed to other institutions out there, like our government, like our doctors, like the so-called scientists, all of this goodwill, this good faith sort of evaporated when it became obviously clear and abundantly clear. They don't give a crap about us at all. And the media has been essentially acting, as he said, as their Praetorian Guard, their little shield, their little buffer to massage the masses, to get everybody to do what they want to do, like put the mask on, lock yourself up, go get 35 pokes, whatever it takes in order to keep you compliant and dumb. And here, the people who break through, the people who speak truth, get slapped back down. And this has happened time and again, and they are now prosecuting people for their involvement with a political organization, with a political movement. So Tucker Carlson, somebody who's been living in this moment, and look at this GIF, and look at this image. I was just watching him and I was thinking in this podcast, he's staring up into the sky here at some of this, right? He's staring up there, man. He is really, I think, thinking it, he's thinking it through, and it's hitting him pretty hard. And so I don't know what happened. I don't know if Ray Epps' story came out and Tucker was going to obliterate them and they said no, or he was going to release more of the January 6 tapes, or he said no, or he was going to do anything that he wanted to do that would be more in alignment with his freedom, his creativity, with the truth. And they said no because they are the Praetorian Guard. They are just the force field for the elite to keep everything in order and to keep the masses malleable. And Tucker recognizes that living in that dishonesty, living in that state of perpetual fear, perpetual confusion, being required to give up your thinking and your self-governance and your autonomy and follow whatever these people in charge tell us to do, it's not living in your truth. And if you're not living in your truth, you are living in darkness, and we cannot be doing that. Here's Tucker explaining it.
The truth is contagious. Lying is, but the truth is as well. And the second you decide to tell the truth about something, you are filled with this, I don't want to get supernatural on you.
It's okay.
But you are filled with this power from somewhere else. Try it. Tell the truth about something. You feel it every day. The more you tell the truth, the stronger you become. That's completely real. It's measurable in the way that you feel. And of course, the opposite is also true. The more you lie, the weaker and more terrified you become. We all know that feeling. You lie about something, and all of a sudden you're a prisoner of that lie. You are diminished by it. You are weak and afraid. Drug and alcohol use is the same way. It makes you weak and afraid. But you look around and you see these people, and some of them really have paid a heavy price for telling the truth. And they are cast out of their groups, whatever those groups are, but they do it anyway.
They are cast out. A lot of people have been cast out. A lot of people have been cast out of their businesses, out of their families. A lot of people out of their political organizations. People have been thrown out of their professions. People have lost everything. People have been thrown out of different online platforms. Presidents have been thrown off the internet. Now Tucker Carlson is being thrown out of Fox News. And the question is why? And the question is, does it relate to this new, what feels like to be this awakening, or this becoming tired and becoming sick of being tired and becoming sick and tired of being sick and tired with the media, and going to be taking some time to disconnect, refocus, and hopefully reemerge with a power level only increased. Hopefully we see that. Now, this was the final clip from Tucker Carlson. On Friday night, the final segment of the Tucker Carlson show, one of the most impactful shows in the history of the country, one of the most profound, I think, leaders in this space, somebody who's held the door open for many other people, somebody who's taken arrows for years so that smaller creators like me and many others can have a crack at it, can even just have a bit of argument in this space. He holds the door, he holds the zone, and he allows other people to participate in the conversation. And so wherever Tucker Carlson lands, we'll be supporting him because he's a man of character and integrity, and he's fighting on the right side of freedom. This is the final segment from Tucker.
Tonight, we interviewed a heroic pizza delivery man called Tyler Morrell, and ever conscious of the opportunity to use our job to get free food, we thought we'd like to taste your pizza. Tyler Morrell joins us in studio. He will deliver literally anywhere. Tyler, it is so great to meet you in person.
A couple Coco's pies.
So these are from Coco's, established 1978. Everybody loves Coco's pizza.
That's right.
Where's Coco's based?
All right, now we're going to watch this. But look, he's opening these pizzas up, and you know Tucker's looking for something, okay? He's looking for something, and he's going to tell us what kind of pizza he likes. And so I'll be curious what you think about these topping selections. I think you know what my opinion is, but let's listen. Watch.
From Coco's, established 1978. Everybody loves Coco's pizza.
That's right.
Where's Coco's based?
Aston, Pennsylvania, and Delaware County.
Delaware County, yep. Best part of the state.
I think we have a special
cheese pies.
We have a special pie for you here.
Okay.
Here's Tucker's pie.
So I am, as you can likely tell, a pizza aficionado. I was a pizza delivery boy for 2 years.
Is it warm at all?
Yeah, it's totally warm. These warmers are just like one of the great wonders of science. This is sausage.
That's sausage
and pineapple. And really quick, as a pizza professional, do you look down on this order?
I do. I think that. I consider a criminal.
Yes.
I knew you did. I used to deliver pizzas and calzones. I considered them immoral, but I delivered them anyway.
It's actually still hot. It's actually still hot. All the way from Philly.
It's so good, it's unbelievable. And you are a hero. How's your leg, by the way? Your leg was injured by the fleeing armed, the car thief.
It's got a bone bruise on it. Down here.
Oh, damn, I can see it.
Yeah, it's not too bad, though.
Were your family and friends impressed by what you did?
They were. They're actually here with me today.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go, once I've stuffed myself on your pineapple and sausage, and you're right, it is a disgusting order, but I have no shame. I'm going to go meet oh, there they are! We just thought, what a great way to end a week.
Yeah.
Truly, that was a great segment, and I'm just grateful that you came on, and I'm especially grateful for the pie.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Employee of the week, we're just make it of the year. Tyler Morrell,
of Coco's Pizza. That's it for us for the week. We'll be back. By the way, the entire episode of Let Them Eat Bugs, not quite as good as pizza, streaming now on Fox Nation. Use the promo code ORIGINALS for 30 days free. And we'll be back on Monday. In the meantime, have the best weekend with the ones that you love, and we'll see you then.
So they were expecting to come back, and obviously that didn't happen. So final send-off from Tucker Carlson. Let's play it out. All right, my friends. Well, that was it for the Tucker Carlson show. And so, my friends, cheers to Tucker Carlson. Cheers, my friends, to Tucker Carlson. It was a hell of a run. You're going to be more powerful and more forceful and a greater cause of good than ever before. Cheers to Tucker Carlson on an amazing run. We'll be waiting for you wherever you land, my friend. Cheers. Tucker Carlson's going to be great, baby. And he's going to be back and stronger than ever. And so we'll keep wishing him the best of luck. Tucker Carlson out from Fox News. We're looking forward to seeing what the next episode has in store for him. We'll continue to follow. Thanks for subscribing, my friends. Thanks for joining along as we continue to cover this. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends. And so, whew, what a day. What a day. Tucker Carlson. I'm still processing it. I always like to check in with Tucker. You know, I always like to see what he's up to. What's he say about this? What's he say about this? We'll look forward to seeing him soon. All right. And so, my friends, we have some serious business to attend to now because it is Proud Boys time. So let's get right to it. We've got a ton, an absolute ton to get to. So let's do it. Proud Boys trial, day 61. It's time for closing arguments. It's been a long time coming. Months of trial now coming to a conclusion. Roger Parloff is there live tweeting at @rparloff on Twitter. And he starts the day off with Judge Kelly taking the bench. All rise. Please be seated. Judge Kelly says, okay, well, before we get started, everybody, I want to get on the phones. Now, Roger gives us a little bit of background here. He tells us what they're seeing. He's in the media room. They've got 2 HD screens, 4 screens on the 2 big screens. Medium shot of Kelly, 3 counsel tables and defendants. Lower right side is reserved for exhibits. And now the judge is bringing in the jury. Right up front, the government chart is set up, showing what people participated in what chats. And now we have the government prosecutor first. Now, just so we're familiar with this, the government prosecutors, they get 2 closing arguments because the system hates defendants and they presume everybody's guilty even though we say they don't. So they get 2 of these things. And so we're going to go quickly through the first one of these, but we are going to cover it. So let's see what we have here. The prosecutor who is doing the closing argument, Connor Mulrow, and he comes up, typical prosecutor, you know, and he starts out like this. He says, whatever happens, make it a spectacle. That was the directive that Enrique Tarrio gave Biggs just before Tarrio's arrest. The tail end of 2 months in which the defendants and other Proud Boys were organizing for action. Politics was no longer for the voting booth. It meant actual physical comment as a battle between good and evil in the actual literal sense, says this prosecutor. That's what politics meant for them. They liked it and they were good at it. And they preached violence. Play a video. And after the video plays, he says, and then they turned their sights on the capital of the U.S., the heart of our democracy. And ladies and gentlemen, you know what happened next. They rushed and stormed across the barricades at the Peace Circle. They destroyed the fence and they pushed upstairs, smashing the window, taking the building. And they heard their leader over and over in a voice of full-throated agreement with what was being done. He said, do what must be done. Don't effing leave. Proud of my boys. Make no mistake. We did this. Prosecutor continues. He says, Now, this is not, as Dominic Pizzola, who you heard from, as he called it, this is not a corrupt and phony proceeding. Pfft. Okay, Mr. Prosecutor. He says, it's solemn. We'll do that in two parts. We're going to go through the facts and the law today. First, the facts. How the defendants came together as a group and acted as a group, and then the law. We're going to talk about what each charge requires, ladies and gentlemen. He says the overarching idea of all of this is the idea of a conspiracy. And so I want to put a few basic agreements on the table, a few basics here for you. An agreement with an unlawful objective. That's the definition. They're charged with multiple conspiracy offenses, and it all boils down to basic things. What and how. The what was to stop the certification, and the how means including any necessary mechanisms, including force. Now, the prosecutor says, a conspiracy can also be unspoken, ladies and gentlemen. It can be implicit. You can use a wink and a nod. You don't need a specific time for when it starts. And as you know, the indictment alleges that between December 2020 and January 2021, those are time windows. But so long as the defendants joined any time within those periods, even if not all the way up until January 6th, even if not until the barricades already came down, he says that's enough. We have total ability to put somebody within that window and charge them. And he says also about conspiracies. An agreement about the objective is sufficient. We don't need the details. We don't need to know somebody's going this way or going that way. As long as they agree to the basic facts, that's enough. So now let's turn to the facts. He says, my goodness, it's been a long trial. You know this, ladies and gentlemen. And you've received evidence in bits and pieces, but now we're going to put it all together. And I want to start back in 2020. In the fall of 2020, we had a bunch of high-ranking Proud Boy leaders, Tario, Nordine, and Biggs, and they were hyper-focused on the election and the special role of the Proud Boys in conflicts around the United States. And they were jubilant when Trump came out at the debate and spoke their name. Trump, and listen to this, they're playing the video. They're playing the video of Trump on the debate stage where Trump said, hey, Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. And I think this is if there's a conviction in this trial, they're going to use this as a pretext to say Trump was also guilty of the conspiracy by literally calling them out on the debate stage. So this is why they're incorporating this in here. Prosecutor says, and Biggs posted to Parler, said, well, sir, we're ready. Trump basically said, go and F him up. And Biggs, who's sitting there at the defense table, says, and this makes me so happy. Now, some elders in the Proud Boy didn't like it. They thought it made the club look bad, and they asked Enrique Tarrio, sitting right there, to disavow Biggs. But Tarrio refused. In fact, he defended Biggs. And Tarrio said, we say stuff like that all the time. He's saying stuff we've always said. The timing was bad, yes. But Real posted, Zachary Real, he's there. He said, waiting for orders. And other people in the Proud Boys, like Bertino and Green, they used the same exact phrase. They called us foot soldiers of the right, preparing for an all-out war. So the prosecutor is reading, it sounds like, other messages from their telegrams, and he shows one up from Biggs. He says, this is a war on Americanism. And he shows one from Tarrio. He says, if Biden takes this election, the Proud Boys will be prisoners. Nordine, another Proud Boy sitting there, says, we're months away from the gulags. It's now or never. Fight or get locked up. Bertino was brought in and testified, and now they're playing from Nordine's podcast. He says somebody else came in called Agent Camilleri, and they showed you posts and podcasts that they celebrated what they had done. They said that they were there en route to D.C. to open a can of whoop-ass. In fact, in one of the messages, Enrique posted a Lords of War photo. Nordine said, good luck to traitors of this country. So he's just reading all the text messages. All right, it's not even that interesting. Proud Boys in the streets, beating the crap out of Antifa and BLM. They're playing another recruitment video. Pizzola's in this video. Said, I'm willing to fight to the last breath to make sure my children don't inherit a communist country. I'm not a violent man, he said, but when and if the need comes, I'm willing to stand first on the line. And so the prosecutor says, you saw all those messages. Dominic got his chance. And ladies and gentlemen, you can infer a person's intent from what they do and say. When you're deciding if they were really willing to use force, you'll have these examples right in front of you. All of these messages from them showing you that yes. He said social media for these defendants wasn't some private diary. It was a megaphone. And they used social media to radicalize others, including Pizzola. That's how they got new recruits and real men. They weren't looking to sing Kumbaya. They were willing to fight. And this was certainly true of men like Dominic Pizzola. He went to rallies in November and December. Now, they're not charged with anything that happened at those rallies, but the way they spoke about those rallies shows their intent. These were guys who wanted to get out there and get dirty. They show some more messages from Nordine. Said the Proud Boys killed it in D.C. today. PB's had a hell of a day today. Real is posting a meme. They're posting more messages. And he said while they were at these rallies, there's going to be a secretive faction within the Proud Boys themselves called the Ministry of Self-Defense. And they walk us through a timeline. They say, follow us along, jury, through this list. At 1:42 a.m., Donald Trump calls for a protest. This is on 12/19. Says January 6th, be there. We'll be wild. At 3:54, Big says, let's get radical and real men. At 3:54 the following morning, Tarrio and Biggs also have a FaceTime conversation, and they start elevating this new chat, the MOSD chat. And says 1 million patriots stormed the Capitol. Talked about Lords of War, Aaron Wolkind. So they're talking about recruiting. We need real men. We need, somebody said, we need to raise bail money. Prosecutor continues saying, the Proud Boys were expressing a desire for violence. They discussed storming the Capitol. They talked about bodies hitting the floor. They talked about stacking bodies in front of the Capitol. And when they discussed letting women in or keeping the Nazis out, it was all about using force. They wanted to harness the boys in a large number. And in fact, during a Zoom meeting, twice people asked, what is our goal for J6? But twice he refused to tell them. I'll fill you in on the ground. Real, when he testified, he showed you how knowledgeable he was about the certification process. But he testified that all the options had failed on January 6th. When Tarrio told the elders what the chat was for, he added the message 1776. Enrique Tarrio posted 1776. In 1776, people fought, died, and killed to change the system of government, says the prosecutor. And Biggs understood that. He plays a video of Biggs where he says, revolution means violence, and it's not pretty. Founders of this country fought to create a nation where leaders chosen by the will of the people and power handed over peacefully. These defendants saw themselves as Trump's army, fighting to keep their preferred leader in power no matter what the law or the court said. It was not 1776. He says on January 4th, Enrique Tarrio was arrested. And this didn't come as a shock. His connection at the Metro PD had been feeding him info for months. But he knew that he'd have his trusted lieutenants on the ground just before his arrest. He had a 2-minute phone call with Biggs, and afterwards he says, whatever happens, make it a spectacle. Which is not an insurrection. It sounds like make it a spectacle, but not an insurrection. Doesn't mean take over the country. Make it a spectacle doesn't mean steal the country. All right. Then Nordine offers to nuke the chats and scrub the chats. Prosecutor says that's because they had something to hide. Says this case is not about an objective. This case is about an objective, not a plan. An objective, not a plan. When you see them figuring out where and when to meet, those are details that don't define a conspiracy. It's the difference between strategies and tactics, big picture versus nuts and bolts. Prosecutor knows they don't have much nuts and bolts. They don't have much about tactics. They don't have many details. They're asking the jurors to zoom out and give it the big picture. It says after the arrest, the objective remains unchanged. And so they don't actually want you to think that they were intending to. Well, maybe they do. Let's continue. Morning of January 6th, he says the Proud Boys met at the Washington Monument. It was clear that they were not there to watch the Trump speech. The Capitol was the focus from the beginning. If they were really there to protect normies, they would have gone to the speech. But they did not make so much as a head fake in that direction. Other people testified that they were roaming around. Biggs posted some messages to Parler, and they're sharing some of their messages. And the prosecutor says, just listen to the contempt in his voice when he says those words. As they march past the officers suiting up in riot gear, the Proud Boys taunt them. Traitors, scum, pick a side. Honor your oaths. Don't make us go against you. She says, they made our intentions known. Their intentions known. And it was plain as day. They were not there to see Trump's speech. They were not there to protect the patriots. They were there to threaten and, if necessary, use force. The certification of the election, that's exactly what they did. First, they walked to the east side of the Capitol to scout it out. And as they went past the west, the peace circle, only one officer manned the barricade. That's weird. Why was there only one guy over there? Somebody said, let's take the Capitol. Hey, let's not effing say that, somebody else said. Don't yell it, do it, somebody said. Then they go to the food trucks. Then they march back to the peace circle. And this wasn't a coincidence of timing or location. Before they got there, prosecutor says the scene was quiet and it was, well, peaceful. But as soon as the Proud Boys got there, things changed. Almost as soon as they got there, Ryan Samsil greeted Biggs. Then he made a beeline towards the barricade. Samsil recognized the leaders of this large group and knew that they were focused on the same goal. And when Samsil went to the barricade, the Proud Boys went right with him. You know who else was right there at the time? Ray Epps, the guy on 60 Minutes yesterday who's living in an alternate reality. They included Ronald Lorkey, who was recruited by Nordine. And barriers were there to protect what was going on in the building. And that proceeding already was underway as rioters were going over the barrier. And Nordine, Biggs, and Reel and Pizzola were all part of the first wave, says the prosecutor. They play a video and they're all highlighted on the video. And you can see how close they were just by looking at it from Reel's perspective. Reel says, F them, storm the Capitol. And Carmen Hernandez, we get our first objection. She says, Your Honor, objection. Says, and I don't know what happened, government had promised to remove Reel's photo, but it hasn't done it in the exhibit they displayed. Ooh, yeah, we talked about that last week. They are copying and pasting messages, and then they are transcribing them. Hernandez objected to the transcription and to the photo, and they were supposed to remove Zachary Reel's photo from it because it was really unnecessary. But the government didn't do that, figures. Reel told you in testimony, the government says, like I said, what was going through my head, these people must know that these are stages I was talking about. Maybe they're trying to get there a few minutes early. But then he felt he needed to say to his own attorney something like this. You're giving me this look, but it's the God's honest truth. Put a pin in that, he says. We're going to come back to that. We're going to come back to Zach Reel's truth in a minute. So something must have happened in the trial where Zach and Carmen were looking at each other. Now, how many times have they pointed out that Nordine's got his fist in the air? And he says, and yes, that's Nordine signaling that he is trying to control them. The defense objects. He says, okay, ladies and gentlemen, keep focused. He's trying to keep his guys in formation to move forward as a group. And he takes the guys he's with, and together he moves forward towards the barricades and towards the building. And as he does, Biggs, Reel, and Pizzola, they don't need to be told. Travis Nugent said that when he saw the crowd surging, he said, are we really doing this? Are we really going in? Then they followed his leader toward the building, Ethan Nordine. They got themselves to the very front of the crowd. They made their way through the crowd. Their hands were on their shoulders. They're playing photos all the way, as all of this is going on. And they got all the way up to the near black metal fence. Bertino came in and he testified that he always led the way and that the normies were always behind us. But Bertino and Matt also used the same phrase to describe the Proud Boys. They said the Proud Boys are the tip of the spear. That was a phrase that Real claimed he'd never heard before. Tip of the spear. Prosecutor continues, saying, this fence was not a big barbed wire fence, but it did slow them down while the police were coming. And you saw Nordine and Biggs and Real rip that fence down. And you saw the force that was necessary to do that, to get it out of where it was bolted into the cement. But Nordine and Biggs personally, in hands-on way, participated in the destruction. Play video. Here we are. Here it is. You can see Big is pulling his mask up, knowing he's doing something wrong. He's covering his face because he's wrecking the fence. And here's Nordine positively ecstatic about what they're doing. And they're playing more video. Here you see Nordine and Biggs. They're each going to work on one of those fence panels. And there you go. Fence just came down. One panel down. Another is on its way in, courtesy of Joe Biggs. More video. We also heard here today, ladies and gentlemen, from Officer Shay Cooney. She testified that she personally saw it come ripped out of the ground and thrown to the ground by Nordine and Biggs. They weren't being taken for a ride. They were pulling on the fence, and they played more video. Says that rioters then, after this fence was ripped out, took over the entire West Plaza area of the Capitol, and hell broke loose on that side of the plaza. You heard the Inspector Lloyd and the Officer Odie and Cooney. They were attacked with every makeshift weapon imaginable. Construction tools, fire extinguishers, pepper spray and bear spray. There was roach spray. There was a piece of black metal fence and baseball bats. Not until the end of the video that Joshua Black got pepper spray ball in the cheek. Every member of the crowd was free to turn around and walk away. Some did. But the Proud Boys stayed. They grinned, they laughed, and Nordine walked over to the front like a general surveying his troops. Some people did more. Pizzola took part in a brutal attack on Officer Odie when he stole that shield. And Real personally attacked an officer with a can of pepper spray. And when he got on the stand, ladies and gentlemen, he lied to you. His attorney asked him over and over, did you ever use force, attack, or assault police officers? He told you no. He said, no, never. That's false. But on cross-examination, our government, Mr. Knierson, showed him a photo of how he was dressed up at the media tower. And it showed a video and a photo of Zachary Real spraying towards the officers. Now, he fought him on that. He said, I can't tell if that's me. And I can't tell what he's doing with his arm. You have another angle? And we gave him another angle. And we came in with another video that eliminated any shadow of a doubt you saw it. Same hat, same goggles, same gaiter, same jacket. They play the video. And here you can see a stream of chemicals coming right out of that nozzle. He did that. And then he got on the stand and lied under oath to you about it. That lie, along with all of his other implausible testimony, tells you exactly how much weight to give anything he told you, 0. And while all of this is going on, the chat leaders are in touch with one another. And they're showing the chat. And they're sending stuff. Do what must be done. They're liking each other's parlor posts. Watch your butt. The National Guard's coming. He tried to call Nordine and Biggs, and he eventually got a call back from Biggs that lasted 42 seconds. But now I want to go over to the West Plaza. You see here in this video, we've got reinforcements from the Metro PD. They're beginning to form a line. On the video, Real's at a standstill. And they make their way to the same spot. But it's not just some random spot. Those stairs under the scaffolding lead right under the first floor of the building where there are doors and windows. And they can gain access to the building. And right when the crowd is losing steam, they all head there. That's not a coincidence, ladies and gentlemen. They and the police saw the Proud Boys force their way up as a group. They were the tip of the spear. A very tip of the spear was the Proud Boy Milkshake, who we saw earlier, saying, let's take the Capitol. You also saw others celebrating. Fonte Koba was celebrating with Tario in Baltimore. And look how the Proud Boys show their hand sign to celebrate the breach. And they're playing videos. Pizzola ran up to the window, smashed it to pieces, and penetrated the building. And by the end of the day, the Capitol would be breached in more places than you can count. Pizzola was the first. When leaders saw that video of him smashing the window, they loved it. They said something like, recognize anyone? Nope. Somebody said, I'm so proud. Looks like George Washington. You saw members climbing on furniture to calm colleagues, says the prosecutor. You saw officers swallowed up by the crowd, trying desperately to hold east doors of the Capitol by putting flagpoles through door handles. But Tarrio said, make it a spectacle. And Biggs said, yep. And he's pointing to these two people, right? Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a national disgrace. To them, it was mission accomplished. They'd done it. They'd stopped certification. Everything else the defendants did after that point was icing on the cake. They went into the buildings as soldiers into conquered buildings. They lit some smokes. They helped themselves to snacks. They stole some flags. And they showed contempt for American democracy. Coming from the Justice Department, that's rich. Just by being in there, they were contributing to the emergency and making it possible to resume certification. Making it impossible. Tarrio understood. He said on Parler, don't leave. Biggs went back into the building a second time. And even if they never set foot in there, that would not have erased anything that they've done up until that point. The damage was already done. What you already saw, a breach 1, 2, 3, and 4, and beyond was concerted action. It was toward a shared goal. Joining together is an agreement. And even if they did not know about everything that they came for, all the evidence of the prior rallies, the telegram chats, the Parler posts, even if you pick up what happened on January 6th, you'd have definitive proof of concerted action and agreement. If you see a car stopped in a snowbank, you hop out and help. Any doubt you're pursuing the same goal? You have a mutual understanding as to the what and the how. It's the same with an attack on the Capitol. Even someone like Matthew Green could be guilty of conspiracy. Remember him? He accepted responsibility and he came and testified here. And think about how peripheral he was. New to the club, first degree, wasn't even in the chat, not a member. Showed up on January 6th and tagged along. But that didn't stop him from knowing, from understanding, from agreeing to the what and the how. And if he's a member, there's no doubt that each one of them is a member as well. The top leader, Tarrio, was giving explicit approval, encouragement, and direction. All of that makes explicit agreements. It's clear from what they said and from what they did. And it's all the more clear now after they reacted. You saw their celebration. You saw their disappointment. Celebration at what they had achieved, but disappointment that they had not gone further. You saw witnesses that the defense chose to put on. Eddie Block and his real good boy, Donnie. Still proud that he entered. George Meza said it was a glorious event. The violence was justified. Those are the people they presented to you. Two defense witnesses were defendants themselves. Each chose to take the witness stand. Their opportunity to show some regret for the roles they played in this shameful episode in American history, but you saw none of that. I asked him, you don't approve of it? He said, at the time, I didn't think I did anything wrong, says Zachary Real. Well, as you sit here, I still feel that. That shouldn't have gone into the building, shouldn't have smoked cigarettes in there either. But if you believe I did anything wrong that day, I'm really sorry, is what he said. Now we're taking a 5-minute break. And we get some exhibits that are submitted. We'll fast forward. Courtesy of Roger Parloff. Make sure you're following him. Judge Kelly's back after the break. So there was a transcript problem, which is interesting. Court reporter asked for a break. He had a technical glitch in his transcription, of course. Question is whether Mulrow should go back. He says, well, I don't think he missed that much. I'll just pick up from where the transcript ended. And Norm says, can we see the transcript? Hernandez is laughing, objecting to the repetition. Roger Roots moves for a mistrial. Holy moly. Matt Green's guilty plea was allowed into evidence for limited purposes. Mulrow is arguing that if Green is guilty, these defendants are guilty. It was admitted only for Green's credibility. Now prosecutors are using it precisely in the way that it was objected to. So everybody, all the defense attorneys are freaking out. So they're looking at this transcript now and they're saying, wait a minute. They were talking about Matt Green's guilty plea. And it was only supposed to be used for Matt Green's credibility. But now they're using it to say he pled guilty. They should also plead guilty. That's not what the guilty plea is for. The guilty plea was only supposed to be used to show that Green may be biased, really, and that the guilty plea may have been pressure to get, they were threatening him with worse penalties. They gave him a good plea deal in order to get him to close the case out, and that might impact his credibility. But they can't use it to say, well, he pled guilty and he pled guilty, therefore the Proud Boys are guilty. And that's what they're essentially trying to do here. And somehow that came out in the middle of this break. There is a transcript error, and the defense team is just freaking out now. Mistrial, Your Honor. Absolute inappropriate use of the guilty plea. It's called bootstrapping. Carmen Hernandez says, I joined in the mistrial. Norm Pattis joins in. Yep, I joined the mistrial too. And Nayeeb Hassan says, hey, I'm joining the mistrial. One thing I'd like to add is Mulrow mentioned this court accepted the plea, implying you, Your Honor, found that there was a conspiracy. And the judge is like, hold on a minute, defense attorneys. I don't think he said that at all, of course. He's like, no. And the prosecutor says, Your Honor, I object to the defendants voicing objections during closing. Nothing improper. I was arguing that he did not have the same depth of involvement. He still understood they shared a collective goal, and the court should overrule their motion. And the judge says, well, obviously, I'm not going to declare a mistrial. Obviously, I want these guys convicted like everybody. I'm not going to declare a mistrial, but the question is whether a curative instruction is required. The judge says, I'm going to consider this issue over lunch, but let's figure out the government's closing. She says, I'll be done in about an hour or so. The jury gets brought back in. She says, all right, everybody, I hope you had a nice break. Now, we left off talking about Zachary Rehl and his classic non-apology. Sorry for what I did, only if you believe I did something wrong, right? Clearly, he believes that he didn't do anything wrong. And Pozzola also came up here and took the stand, but he said that to take responsibility, but he did anything but that. In fact, Dominic got up there and he admitted nothing. He said his acts caught crystal clear on video. He blamed everyone but himself for his actions. He blamed Antifa. He blamed the economy. He blamed the COVID. He blamed his Marine training. He blamed Ray Epps. He blamed the man in the white shirt and Ryan Samsel and flashbangs that weren't even flashbangs. Some guy in New York, Dominic told him to get rid of his cell phone, back when it was fresh. Before the defendants found themselves in the courtroom, they were ecstatic. They were utterly unapologetic. Sharing some messages from Enrique Tarrio saying, proud of my boys, we did this. Nordine saying, I regret nothing. They're saying Biggs was referencing an attack on Pearl Harbor and sharing some other posts. Mulrow says, Dominic Pozzola, here's his video inside the Capitol. He's saying, this is effing awesome. I knew we'd take this. She says, but his celebration turned to disappointment after the certification was completed. He said, we have no regret for the officers who were assaulted. No disappointment, but they were disappointed that things had not gone further. Nordine said, effing disgusting. I'm so mad. F you, Trump. You left us on the battlefield alone. Zach Rehl said, we lost our country. We should have held the Capitol. Somebody else said they should have burned it. And Rehl said, yup, fired up. They felt disappointed and betrayed. They'd taken a huge risk. If they succeeded, they would have been heroes. But now there are consequences. The defendants have 10 charges, 3 conspiracy counts and 7 substantive counts. And the prosecutor says the conspiracy all boils down to the what and how. Same things we've already been discussing. The what was to stop the certification. So they're boiling this down to like 1 + 1 = 2 for the jurors because their minds are jello at this point. It's been 61 days. Says the what is stopping certification. The how, any means necessary, including force. And says, by the way, conspiracy can be unspoken. It doesn't require a time, and you don't even need any details. Seditious conspiracy, going through the charges. What is that, ladies and gentlemen? If you oppose the authority of the U.S. or you prevent or hinder the execution of a law, that is it. And that fits here to a T. They were preventing the peaceful transfer of power. This is not overthrowing the government. It's just preventing the transfer. And here's a second way. Interfering with the Electoral Count Act. Destruction of the metal fence. The use of force from Real was when he sprayed officers. When Nordine said, we use force on the podcast. With William Pepe pulling barricades out of the way. Pushing people upstairs. All of this use of force didn't come out of nowhere. They've been building this for a long time. Each of the 5 of them is guilty of seditious conspiracy. Count 2. Conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. Defining what corruptly means. You're going to get a copy of all these instructions and you're going to be able to look through these and see what they say. And they're going through the elements, and so we'll fast forward through all of these, right? Willfully causing the act, aiding and abetting, co-conspirator liability, and attempt. As we talk often about here, each charge, and this stuff is critically important, it just doesn't translate well here, but the jurors are going to be going through each one of these and deciding, did they do this? Did they willfully cause the act? Did they aid and abet? Check. Were they co-conspirator? Check. Was this in a check? And all of these different things, maybe that's not a good example, but the different elements is what they're talking about. And then she's saying all of their conduct applies to the elements. You saw damage. You saw civil disorder, overwhelming law enforcement, staying in unrestricted areas, injury to individuals and damages. You saw injury and damage galore. So we've got all of the check boxes checked. And also the destruction of government property in counts 6 and 7. It requires damage over $1,000. And look at the damage. The total damage, $32,000 according to our government estimate, which is, 97.56 per foot, 328 linear feet. So the 6-foot long panel was $1,100. If you take the 2 panels and the window, each is valued over $1,000. They say so total times 2. They're doing some math for the jury here. And they're saying it's over the threshold. So therefore, they're guilty of that. And Dominic Pizzola also took property. The property was stolen. And so the prosecutor finally wraps up there and he says, now that's a good place to end. He says, Officer Odie was just one man who stepped up that day to do the jobs they had to do. Police officers and member of Congress, they honored their oaths because our democracy missed it. He says, ladies and gentlemen, now you need to do what the Constitution expects of you. Ultimately, you are all going to agree on what justice demands. A verdict of guilty of every defendant on every count. Government prosecutor Mulrow is now done. And so the government finishes their closing argument. The judge is going to excuse everybody for a little bit of a break. Attorneys are breaking until 1:15, and now we're coming back. And so we'll fast forward to that moment. Let's see where this was. All right, let's take a beverage break, my friend. Cheers to rehydrate and stay hydrated. Cheers. Oh, yeah, that's good stuff right there. Whew. All right. So now we're seeing the dispute that broke out. And they're at lunch. And now we're back. Judge Kelly is back on the bench after lunch. And he says, I had a lot to think about while I was having my sandwich. And I've decided that the government using Mulrow's guilty plea is not a basis for a mistrial. Shocking. I already gave a limiting instruction after Green's testimony. I'm happy to restate that. Because no guilty plea was mentioned by Mulrow, my proposal would be to tuck this into the short instructions I give after the closings. That's what I think makes sense. And Roger says, well, we'd like it now, Judge. And the defense says, yeah, we want it now too. Tario and Biggs. We want it now and at the conclusion. So the judge says, fine. Gosh, you guys are a pain in my butt. I'll read it when they come back. The jury comes back out and he reads it. He says, Ladies and gentlemen, just a reminder, the whiny defense lawyers who care about their clients and the presumption of innocence and freedom and liberty and due process, they're making me read this again. So he says, evidence of the guilty pleas is for the use with respect to their credibility and for the fact of their role in the offense. Gosh, happy? Defense is like, yeah, we are. Fine. So now the defense attorney, Nick Smith, who represents Ethan Nordine, stands up for a closing argument. And he walks up to the podium. And he shuffles his papers. He says to the jury, long trial, ladies and gentlemen. You've paid close attention, and we are grateful for your service. And it has been a long trial, and I can't say it's been a very eventful one. You've been forced to watch the same clips over and over like it's Groundhog Day, as if every stupid political gesture was a smoking gun. You've heard the White House noise machine as often as evidence, and we're sorry to have taken up your time. In openings, the government promised you moon on a stick. They promised to show you that they masterminded 3 pre-planned conspiracies. They showed you drunk men walking around a mall. These guys sometimes wheeling around a mall in wheelchairs, and they were stopping at food trucks. Okay, drunk, non-disabled people in wheelchairs at malls, insurrecting the food court. We've seen nearly constant attempts, ladies and gentlemen, to lure you into making judgments based on anger and guilt by association. We heard a lot. I'll just keep, yeah. They played the video of Trump in a debate. Does that prove some conspiracy here? What does that have to do with anything? You know it doesn't. Trump didn't conspire with Nordine. So why was it played to you? It was played to manipulate you into confusing your dislike for that guy, Trump, with proof of the crimes charged. This is a government case built on innuendo and a mistaken view of conspiracy. The government showed you videos from November and December. One man was stabbed. Was it a member of Congress? No, it was Jeremy Bertino. So that bucket's got a hole in it and it's not going to carry beer. And then in November and the December rallies, they came up before Trump's tweet in December. There was no evidence at those November or December rallies that these men planned to come to DC on the 6th. The former president haven't even proposed the idea yet. So why did the government show you those videos and read you those telegrams about those things? Manipulation. First, ladies and gentlemen, there were loud scenes and violence that might convince you that they're the kind of people who might commit violence. That's not how we think about criminal justice in this country. The kind of people who might commit violence, that's not the law. We punish charged acts, not character of a person for who he hangs out with or what somebody else thinks that they might be capable of. Thank God for that. So what's the other reason they showed you the 2020 rallies? To fill a hole. They've got no evidence that these guys, these gentlemen here, plan to use force on J6. It was all a noisy, chaotic distraction. The government claims something about the way Bertino's stabbing was investigated that led these men to use violence on the 6th. But nothing about the Proud Boys' approach to the police changed after December. Nick told you that. And second, it doesn't make sense to enter the Capitol to protest Bertino's stabbing. Why would they go in there to protest the stabbing? Law enforcement who investigated the Bertino stabbing have nothing to do with the Capitol Police. Those videos were so that you would hate these men and you would be fearful of them. Did this evidence prove 3 pre-planned conspiracies beyond a reasonable doubt? No. Start with a cooperating witness. They brought in Matt Green. He thought that the breach was spontaneous. Shortly after January 6, Green told the FBI, I'm telling you the God's honest truth. Stuff got out of hand. He wasn't able to testify about any conspiracy. So how did the government get him here at all? They threatened him with gun charges. After all, he's changed his story. How do we know? Well, it's all caught on film. So the government also then took Mr. Bertino, we call Mr. Noblebeard. And just like Matt Green, larger and more ridiculous. They also got him on possession of gun charges, and a lot of them. And Bertino testified that he was a leader of the chat and a member of the conspiracy. But here's the weird thing. He said that, but then he testified he didn't know anything about a plan. Not even aware of an objective, showing up a close screen of his testimony. He says, I want you to think about this, what the prosecutor told you. They told you to think about the distinction between objective, and plan. It's ludicrous. That's not the law. The Supreme Court says you must be aware of the essential elements of the plan. That's the law. Bertino wasn't even in D.C. on January 6th. He wasn't on a march. He wasn't at the food trucks. He couldn't see Nordine raising his fist to stop the Proud Boys at the Peace Circle. He couldn't say where the objective was. Just somewhere in the Telegram chats. But he told the FBI it wasn't in the Telegram chats. They played the audio of Green. He says somebody else just talking stupid stuff. He told the FBI he didn't take those seriously. And why was Bertino brought in? The defense says, well, like Green, it was the illegal gun charges. They are threatening them with more penalties. Why plead guilty if he didn't do it? He thought, if I plead guilty to sedition, maybe my sentence will actually be lower if I just pleaded to guns. Bertino told you he didn't know a plan, didn't know any objective, but he still agreed to it. I want to go on from Noblebeard, he says, and you did not hear any other person admitting conspiracy who didn't exist. Charles Donahoe, Johnny Blackbeard, you didn't see them called as witnesses. You should, and you should infer that they had nothing to say about the government's case. You, ladies and gentlemen, should infer they'd have been less useful than Green and Bertino, if you can even believe it, because they're so useless themselves. But how about social media and the Telegram chats? Let's first consider these men. They published their criminal plot on Parler, their insurrection plans. They published it on Parler. Does that make sense to you, ladies and gentlemen? Many of the posts are in bad taste. Don't get me wrong. I agree. Like, I wouldn't post that. I wouldn't upvote that. But are these evidence of criminal conspiracy? No, it's not. It's manipulative and wrong. You may not agree with it, but doesn't make it criminal. What about the Telegram chats? Before we get to them, I want to play some of the comments. They play some audio of Bertino. He says that the ministry chat was just a small group of guys decided we're not going to break the law. Everything that was supposed to happen was peaceful. I thought we were doing the same thing we'd always done. March. I never thought that was going to happen was going to be more than this. He says he didn't really commit seditious conspiracy. But the government searched their phones and their computers, and they didn't find anything about jumping barricades or storming the Capitol. The texts and telegrams you saw that they paraded here are often from people you never even heard the real names of. There isn't a single chat showing that Nordine planned to use force. It just doesn't exist. What does exist is some random political commentary repeatedly strewn throughout the Telegram chats as evidence these people had no idea what they were doing as late as January 5th. You have a lot of chats designed to inflame your anger and make you dislike them. Did you see people celebrating? Did you see people using avatars with turtles and so on? The government wants you to find these people guilty because of what other people did and said. The government says these men failed to rebuke the speakers, like the guy with the turtle avatars. That's just another way of saying they're guilty for what other people did. And this idea is monstrous. We could never use the internet. We'd have to spend every waking minute rebuking all the filth in the world. Telegram chats. No evidence Nordine even saw most of the chats. His phone was off on January 6th. And the government witness, Kate Kane, admitted that. So the chats themselves are also inconsistent with the conspiracy. On January 4th and January 5th, the defense attorney says, commentary not knowing what the plans are for the next day. What's the plan? Johnny Blackbeard said, he didn't think there was a plan at all. Well, that doesn't make any sense. If there's an agreement, how do all these guys keep saying there's no plan? There was no testimony that you heard today that they were using code or lingo to hide their communications. He said people have done these terrible things in the Capitol, and they're making inflammatory comments in the chat, so you know they're not talking in code. Real in this chat copies and pastes a copy of criminal charges against Biggs. He says, look, the government is trying to make it sound like it was all planned. The Proud Boys are sending messages stunned that they're being accused of planning a siege. Now, they say that fear of arrest does not prove a pre-planned conspiracy to storm the Capitol. All right, yeah, these men were afraid of being arrested and trespass. Yes, they were concerned they might get in trouble, but not for conspiracy, not for deleted chats. FBI experts said blanks in the messages are not necessarily deleted messages, and some people deleted messages to avoid getting doxxed. That's not evidence of a pre-planned agreement. And consider the video conference sessions that they had. We played some of those here, but they were very selectively used. At one point, Enrique Tarrio said the rallies should not be about fighting. Also said we're never going to be the ones to cross a barrier. So why would he be misleading people if that's what Enrique Tarrio said? Moreover, the defense continues, saying Ethan Nordine knew the entire march was being filmed. It was all being online. When he said, we're going to go down to the Capitol, make a presence, there was no secret code here. Nordine was telling you the plan. We're going to go down to the Capitol, make a presence, and go back to the main rally. That's what he said. That's the plan. Doesn't involve insurrection. Somebody approached Nordine and asked, are we going inside the Capitol? Nordine says, no, we're not. If she wanted to go in, she should have found Ray Epps. Plan was to go to Capitol for a minute and then back to the rally. It's utterly inconsistent with the pre-planned conspiracy. And so the defense says, look, there are two alternatives here. All right. One, these men are masterminds who thought every second ahead. Or two, they were just being themselves. And if they were being themselves, take them at their word. The most logical, simplest explanation, which is utterly inconsistent with every conspiracy charge. There's no way to reconcile this. Travis told you that Nordine was approached by a guy who had identified himself as a pastor. Pastor said, you all should jump over the barriers and go in. Nordine told him no. This is the third time he's indicated this is not the plan. We're not going in. At the food trucks, Travis Nugent told you the group was making spontaneous decisions, ladies and gentlemen. That's inconsistent with the pre-planned attack. Some were hungover from the night before. Some wanted to proceed. But Nordine was among those who wanted to go back to the hotels because he was hungover. And that testimony was never contested. Nugent was called by the government. And Nugent also testified that when the group moved on and started crossing barriers, he said, I'm going to go find my friends. Now, you've been shown videos of the defendants using a megaphone, but you're not told anything about this man also using a megaphone. And now we're talking about Ryan Samsel, saying there's no evidence that Samsel and Biggs had the same goals. And there's another man in the green circle. He's looking surprised right here. He's two of the first men approaching the barrier. But none of the defendants are even looking at those rioters. If there's a plan to storm the Capitol, why would you do what Nordine did here? Raise his fist. Prosecutor said he's raising his fist to get the group to regroup, but that's not in evidence. We're not debating it's appropriate to go forward into the Capitol. Of course not. He raised his hand because he didn't know what to do. It's not his plan to go forward. Now, the government might say, yeah, he should have left. That doesn't mean that his reaction to stop was false. Nick touched his fence, himself touched the fence. He was offended I asked. He said he wasn't using force to commit violence, that he was steadying himself. But you saw the clip. It also involves Officer Shay Cooney. She's looking nowhere near Nordine. And there's a figure who pulls on the fence multiple times. See all of these men whip back in time as a man with a gator pulls? Shay Cooney is nowhere within the sight lines of Nordine. Her sight line is blocked by other people. Now I want to go back to January 6th. Smith is showing us photos of the fence again, discussing interference with law enforcement. He says, ladies and gentlemen, you saw one video of a protester stopping an interference with an officer. He stopped Chris from shoving an officer. Nordine grabbed Chris's shoulder and says, is that the intent of someone who wants to interfere with law enforcement? Why would he stop an assault? Of course it isn't. The prosecutor suggested that Lloyd, Cooney, Ode, and Riggleman were interfered with, but Nordine didn't take any action to interfere with them. The joint session was suspended at 1:14 because of objections. The two houses split up. The Senate recessed at 2:13. The House recessed at 2:29. The joint session resumed at 11:08. After Congress resumed, they continued to debate till 3-something in the morning. There's something the government doesn't want you to know. Nordine doesn't enter the building until sometime. He missed it. By the time he enters the building, the House wasn't in session, and there wasn't a Senate in session. The government wants you to believe that they interfered in the proceeding, but the proceeding wasn't in procession. There was no interference because they had already adjourned. Gavelled out. You didn't see Nordine looking for members of Congress or interfering with the police because there's no evidence of these men or that they caused House members to hide in the galley. They weren't responsible for any of that. Nothing in evidence, he says, shows you the causal link between Nordine and what you see on the screen. That is before Nordine even enters the building. And says one thing the government's closing didn't mention was the 1776 returns document. It was extracted from Enrique Tarrio's phone. Now, if this is evidence, it doesn't make much sense. The Capitol building is not even a part of the plan in the 1776 document. The proposal is for a sit-in. A sit-in is nonviolent. It doesn't involve force. It can't be seditious conspiracy. And says, by the way, I want to talk to you about this pricing. The government is overpricing everything. Typical. Black metal fence, $97.56 for a 6-foot segment, some 4 feet, is $585. 4 feet is $390. And there's no evidence in this case about how long Nordine's segment was. So it's not even over $1,000, so you can't get him with that either. They say that McIntyre testified he didn't know which segment was Nordine's. No evidence that Nordine's segment was even destroyed. And if you don't know Nordine's segment was damaged and they were going to replace the whole thing anyway, there's no evidence that Nordine caused any damage at all. The clips you were shown from January 6 were loud and chaotic. It creates an emotional reaction. Remember when one prosecutor charged up and down with scary profile pictures, or the challenge coin? Government agents raided homes? Shiny coins that get your eye. Useless fool's gold. What happened at the Capitol was a disgrace. He says, but the government showed you footage of people fighting in tunnels, hitting police, but they didn't show you these men who directed these activities. So what's the point? It's just guilt by association. We have seen evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. Says, have we seen evidence beyond a reasonable doubt? The government masterminded 3 pre-planned conspiracies? No. No, and it's not close. Michael Graves told you he met up with Nordine, reached an agreement to go back to the Airbnb around 3 or 4 to hear music, saying the Proud Boys are so disorganized they couldn't even organize a trip to McDonald's. And saying there's no evidence that he's lying. There was a breach at 2:13 p.m. The plan was to go back to an Airbnb and have a music party after they took over the Capitol. Doesn't make any sense. You also heard from Eddie Block and his good boy, Donnie, a paraplegic photographer. He said that there wasn't a plan to storm the Capitol, according to what he saw. He told you decision-making at the Washington Monument was spontaneous. Travis Nugent, his testimony was critical. Was with Nordine the entire day and hasn't been charged with anything. Not trespass or anything. He's done every single action that the defendants in this case have done. At the food trucks, Nugent said that Nordine wanted to go back. It doesn't make any sense to say that he was planning to storm the Capitol. And also when he said he saw Nordine put his body in between the police and the rioters, it's a state of mind inconsistent with the plan to interfere. The defense continues. Says you heard from Aaron, another witness. He was an informant since 2008. At a critical moment, he's at a peace circle. He sends a text to the FBI saying Proud Boys did not do it, did not inspire, herd mentality. When you keep hearing the same things over and over, you can't disregard it. He said the Proud Boys didn't do it. It was just a herd mentality. Saying the Proud Boys, in fact, tried to de-escalate this. You also heard from Jeff Finley. He said when Ethan Nordine raised his fist at the circle, Finley saw it. And the government had stipulated that at least 8 informants and 2 at the Capitol were in Telegram chats. But the FBI did not use info by these informants to stop the conspiracy. Why not? Well, 2 reasons. 1, people saw it and wanted that to happen. That's preposterous, says this defense lawyer. Yeah, right. So why, if there were a bunch of feds who were monitoring all of these insurrectionists, Did they not stop the conspiracy? The defense says, well, one reason might be they wanted it to happen, which is crazy, obviously. So number two would be considered that nobody thought the chats were criminal or that they were a conspiracy. Extremely powerful testimony that the chats are being looked at in a different light than before. So back to my client, Ethan Nordine. What did he do on January 6th? He had no weapons. He assaulted no one. He broke nothing in the Capitol. He accosted no members of Congress. He went in no office. He had no plan or objective except to protest. And he had the same objective as thousands of other people. But I want to go back to the defense witnesses. Was their credibility challenged? No. The government attacked their character. The government threw muck at them. Aaron worked as an informant for 15 years. The government asks you to receive some text in 2020. When someone says, let's burn the eyes out of some group. Sir, isn't it true you moved a podium? That wasn't a good thing to do. But does that mean that his testimony was false? No. Same with Nugent. The cross was about bad text that he had sent or received. But was he ever charged? And the prosecutor says, Your Honor, may we be heard, please? I know he's in the middle of closing, but I want to be heard. They have a sidebar. They come back. Smith continues. He says, we also ask you to take notice of how the government asks certain questions of witnesses. Notice how the government never asks the most important questions, like was there an agreement? Was there a plan? They know the answers, but they don't like them. So he revisits the definitions of seditious conspiracy. He says the government has not shown any agreement at all, except an agreement to protest and march. They have not shown when an agreement was reached or by whom. Says the defendants must be aware of the essential nature of the plan. Objection sustained. Now watch this. Objection sustained. Now the judge is saying, okay, we're going to take a break here. The defendants must be aware of the essential nature of the plan. So they're arguing points of the law. We had heard previously here that the government came out and said, well, you don't need to know the specifics, right? You just need an objective, not the details. Objection sustained, and the judge excuses everybody. The jury leaves. Court reporters break of 10 minutes. Now the judge goes on a tear here. He says, Mr. Smith, so much of this is inconsistent with how you've conducted yourself throughout this case. You've got misstatements of law that you've stated them, and now you've got a graphic up on the screen. When you're done here, I'm going to instruct the juror that what you've told them is wrong. It's not the law, and it's very misleading. The judge is fired up. He's hot right now, says Roger. He's pissed. So when they come out, I'm going to tell them you're wrong, and that's a bad thing for the jury to think about the lawyer. The lawyer just misled them. Whoa. So he says, tell me why you should tell them what the law is and not me. He's telling Mr. Smith. Why do you get to tell them and put them on your slides what the law is? I don't get to tell them. The defense attorney says, Your Honor, what? Mr. Mulrow, who was just up in front of me, instructed the government on the law throughout his constant slides. We're not reading the law as inconsistent. It's from a Supreme Court case. The judge says, yeah, but you took yours out of context. And also, you've repeatedly commented on who's been charged and who has not. We've litigated this many times already, Mr. Smith. My goodness gracious, he says. My goodness gracious, this judge. The defense says, yeah, but Your Honor, Mr. Mulrow had a mistake on his slides, and it wasn't deliberate. That happens. The judge says it was the third time when the government finally wanted it to be heard. Okay, I already gave you some leeway on 1 and 2, but you did it a third time. And he says, yeah, but Your Honor, the Blumenthal quote is literally from the Supreme Court. It's the law. He says, I know what it is. We already litigated it. We took a lot of time litigating this. And you're never going to convince me that you're allowed to argue the law that I haven't approved. I have to correct them after you're done. That is not the law, and they are going to disregard it. This is what happens when we take a lot of time to litigate jury instructions, Mr. Smith, and you disregard them. He says, Your Honor, I did not view this as inconsistent with what Your Honor said, okay? It was different, but not inconsistent. Judge says, anyone with experience understands. Once a judge rules on what the law is, the attorneys don't get to freelance. You argued how I should consider Fisher, and you made the argument to me. I sat down, I read the case, but I decided the case was out of context. I'm going to instruct them. He says, well, when they come back, I'm going to go through a couple more slides here. Obstruction, I'm going to argue the government hasn't shown an unlawful benefit. And the judge says, well, you can argue that, but you can't argue that it's required. And he says, Judge, I was sincerely not trying to show your honor's argument was wrong. I didn't mean to do that. Says, I don't think there's any jury instruction under the sun that I've seen that includes that language. And the prosecutor says, I think we need to emphasize, Judge, this was grossly improper to instruct the jury this way, and it gives the imprimatur of SCOTUS to do it. Another improper error in his slides, it gives seditious conspiracy in the conjunctive and rather than the disjunctive or, which makes it more difficult to obtain, right? If you have to do this and this in order to get the thing, that's harder than having to do this or that in order to get the thing, right? Because you got to do two instead of one or the other. So he's saying that and is different than or, which makes it harder for the jury to convict. The judge is now discussing the curative instruction, what he's going to tell them all. He says, this is a misstatement of the law at the heart of the case. I don't want to interrupt the closing at all. And the defense says, well, we'd ask your honor to look at the transcript. Okay, I said something that's from the red book, literally, the pattern jury instructions. The judge says, at the moment, I don't care about the red book. I care about my ruling on the instructions. Don't bother with the red book. Bother with the instructions that I gave. And the jury, and the prosecutor says, the jury needs to be told the deviation is inaccurate. And the judge is fired up. I need a break for 5 minutes. So they break for 5 minutes. Whew. So then the judge comes back. And Mr. Smith is speaking again. He says, Your Honor, on the point about correcting the lawyers, Mr. Mulrow indicated that being at a riot alone is not civil disorder. That's not correct. We'd ask the court, if the court is going to correct me, that it also correct the government at the same time. He says, no, there was no objection at that time, so I'm not going to consider it. Should have objected. He said, well, Your Honor, I was, Judge, I don't care. It was a stray phrase in a case that's not part of my jury instructions. You were all heard extensively. So the prosecutor doesn't get a scold because the defense didn't object to it. And the judge is scolding the defense and is going to read them a curative instruction. Roger Root says, Your Honor, I have a point about the government's closing, by the way. And the judge says, no, I don't care. This is not getting hijacked. There was no objection at the time. Defense says, but Judge, I'm going to correct the government statement on civil disorder. I'm going to say that, right, in my closing. He says, we correctly stated the law and the court's instruction, Your Honor. And so the judge says, everybody shut up and bring the jury back in. The judge gives the juries the instructions, says, Mr. Smith was lying to you. He's bad defense lawyer. Bad lawyer. Okay. So then Smith says, all right, ladies and gentlemen, seditious conspiracy. The jury's back in. Ladies and gentlemen, the government hasn't shown any conspiracy at all. They haven't. Who did it? Where did it happen? They haven't told you what opposing authority of government means or anything other than protests. The government has shown you Nordine agreed to use force against people on property, but no weapons. If they wanted to use force, why did they leave their guns home? Why are we talking about water bottles? You saw a video of people fighting in a tunnel. The government cited some people's names, but guess what? They're not defendants in this case. So why were they showing you those videos? But to just manipulate you. The government hasn't shown Nordine knew that thing was even going on. The Capitol was governed by law as opposed to custom. That's an element of this offense. The government has not shown an agreement to do anything besides march. The fact that the people breached, does that show an agreement? No. So many witnesses testified that this was spontaneous. The fact is, there was a riot at the Capitol doesn't mean these people knew in advance there wouldn't be enough police, that the Capitol wouldn't be adequately protected. Why'd they chance it? These are men walking around without guns, with beer cans in their hands, planning to stop the peaceful transfer of power. The video shows them doing the exact same thing as thousands of other people. Is every riot a conspiracy? They're pretty big, different concepts. You also saw images of Nordine in the building. Did he try to find where the vote count was taking place? No, nothing indicates that. What you've seen instead are drunk comments, stupid comments made on Parler. The government hasn't shown Nordine actually obstructed the vote count at all. The joint session suspended an hour before he even entered the building. The House and the Senate recessed before he entered, and the chronology just doesn't work. And so we didn't also prevent officials from discharging their duties or to induce them to leave. You saw evidence of the opposite. In fact, Nordine was stopping an assault. It's impossible. Making positive efforts to stop an assault. There's no substantive crime of obstruction either. They have not shown that he actually obstructed any vote. The joint session was already suspended before he entered, and we haven't shown Nordine obtained a benefit that he knew was unlawful. He didn't know anything. Haven't shown Nordine knew it was unlawful at all. So if he's sincere in his belief that the election system was misguided, they haven't shown anything like this. That's corruption. Objection. Now, it says one element of consciousness of wrongdoing is that they haven't shown that he knew it was unlawful. Now we go to destruction of property. We're doing some more math here. Less than $1,000. Now we're talking about the Senate window. There's no evidence Nordine had anything to do with breaking the window. No evidence he even spoke with Pizzola. They didn't even know each other. No evidence of any agreement to destroy property. No evidence of any conspiracy. And then count 8, the water bottles. There's no evidence that Nordine had anything to do with Donahoe throwing water bottles, or that throwing water bottles had anything to do in the middle of a vote count. They were in the middle of a riot, and that's it. Says, what about assault? Nordine wasn't even close to the shield when it was taken, and says that there must be a unanimous verdict on each count, and it must be unanimous on the theory of liability. 6 of one and 6 of the other, that's not unanimous. And says, I want to wrap this up here. The First Amendment and the Capitol protest are very important. Imagine the effect on American politics if the government is right. Say you attend a protest in D.C., ladies and gentlemen. A protester commits a violent act and you don't. You stand there, you observe it, you don't leave. Maybe you should leave. The government seizes your devices. Every offensive political comment you've ever made is now turned into evidence. And you plan to agree with the people at a mall, and that's described as a conspiracy. This is not who we are. This is very dangerous. This issue is not whether events at the Capitol were bad or a disgrace. They obviously were. The issue is not about trespass. It's not even charged here. It's not whether you like the Proud Boys or not. The issue is whether they committed the crimes charged. A triple pre-planned conspiracy. How many more witnesses have to tell you breaches were spontaneous? The crowd had herd mentality. What kind of conspiracy involves breaking to go hear music? The standard of proof here is beyond a reasonable doubt. And I want to tell you about a 1770 trial called the Boston Massacre. John Adams said it's better for 5 guilty people should escape unpunished than 1 innocent person should die. I'm not saying the people here are guilty, but that's how important reasonable doubt is. The government case is held together by paper clips and rubber bands. You may have heard the expressions. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Sometimes a riot is just a riot. We ask you to render a verdict of not guilty. And Mr. Smith is now done. So Carmen Hernandez is now up, and she gets her slides up on the screen. And big on the screen, it says, Zachary Rehl is not guilty. Love it. Says, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the first thing I want to do here is thank you. What you sat through the last 4 months was above and beyond the call of duty. This has been a huge case for all of us. Says, I grew up in New York. I'm a Latino. I'm pretty old at this point. Judge says, can you move your mic closer? She stands next to Zachary Rehl, which is good. You want to humanize your client. Probably put her arm around him and patted him on the head. You know, one of these. Says, he stands before you here, but not with nothing but me and my due process clause to protect him. Which is true. Carmen Hernandez has been fighting this case very aggressively with a very limited amount of resources. Remember, the U.S. government has billions of dollars, the entire DOJ, entire FBI, all of the other federal agencies, all of the media, all of Congress, versus 5 defendants and a handful of defense lawyers. So she says, the only thing that stands before you with nothing but me and a due process clause to protect him. There are 5 prosecutors, FBI agents, a mountain of evidence, much of it having nothing to do with him at all. And now I'm not going to try not to repeat the points that Mr. Smith brought up. But video after video after video of the event, from the monument to the first breach to the bike racks, there's a lot of videos. I'm not downplaying it. We're watching videos from bird's eye views a lot of the time. We're seeing an overview and in retrospect. So when we see a scene, we know everything we've watched on TV already. She says it's been over 2.5 years since this happened. Real said when he stood there, he thought it was a rowdy people like at a rock concert. I know that may seem incredible now, but he had no idea what was going to happen. Thought about it like another crazy event, just like any other event. So let's not try to Monday morning quarterback this and try to figure out what was in his mind. Mr. Smith told you the importance of this. We who live in DC are familiar with demonstrators. That one was particularly large and nasty from some people. Majority who were there were not, though. When the Women's March happened and many of us showed up, millions of women showed up. People were on stage saying stuff I didn't know that they were saying. The point is we all attend rallies, and a lot of men thought that their cause was just. She says Real was not guilty, is not guilty. Let me say to Mr. Mulrow, the prosecutor, he's presented a very interesting and well put together story, but it's a story. It's not facts you have found. While the founders did say a lot of crazy stuff, I was not one of the men who created equal. Nevertheless, some of the Constitution is a says, but it is a story. It's not facts you have found. While founders did a lot of crazy stuff, I was not one of men created equally. Nevertheless, some of the Constitution is a document of genius. We believe Americans, you, the jury, are the power in this courtroom. Not the lawyers, not the agents, not the Honorable Judge Kelly. You are persons with the power. All of this ends up here with you. So I hope the ability to tell a pretty story like the government did here today doesn't decide this case. Or the ability to have hundreds of people present a pretty PowerPoint doesn't decide this case. I believe in basic fundamental wisdom. Having 12 American citizens come together and say who did what. Implore you to take that difficult oath you take and follow through in this case. You see, people may think that these guys are racist or sexist. Some of them may be, but that's not what they're being charged with. If you don't like what they say, that doesn't make them guilty. The government, says Carmen, has the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt on every single element in this case. No principle more firmly established here than the presumption of innocence. We have the due process clause of the Fifth Amendment. And the Sixth Amendment, that's where you come in, the impartial jury. The right to be confronted with witnesses against you. In this case, there was a lot of theory versus reality. In theory, the Proud Boys are Mad Max. But it's just Mad Max Bertino. Mr. Real was there, but didn't see Bertino. There were videos in December, but you haven't seen my client, Real, acting violent in any of them. Not a single one. I'll get to the one on the last day where they pull this video out and claim that he was spraying. They confront him with it. Can't you see your hat? No, frankly, you can't. Consider whether, she says, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll come back to that. She says about Zach. He's the son of a police officer, the grandson of a police officer, had a difficult life. Did I bring that up to get sympathy? You bet I did. But also to say, look at his life. Is there something that convinces you that something about what they're telling you is not accurate? His father dies when he's 12. Mother, bartender, can't support him. By 16, he's sleeping at his cousin's house. Starts working, joins the Marines, there for 4 years, ends up as a corporal. I'm not saying he's a hero, pencil pusher, or a glorified FedEx employee. He gets a good conduct medal. He managed to get himself straightened up, go to the Marine Corps, get an education. Does that count for anything? Does that give you any doubt that he shows up here to overthrow the government or whatever this is? Seditious conspiracy, most serious offense Americans can be charged with? Is that consistent with his life? He got his BA from Temple in 2016. Master's 3.5 GPA 2017. Knows Henry McGill from Yuma, Arizona, shout out. Works at Real's Bada Bing restaurant. McGill comes here. Tells you something. He's Zach. Here's Zach's adorable little girl here today. She's sitting here in courtroom. Look at her. 1 year old. Theory versus reality. The theory is Zach is violent. The reality, it's not. No video, no photo, no testimony. Did not punch anyone. Did not destroy any property. She says Trump's not on trial here. 70 million people voted for him. And did he whip people into a frenzy? Yeah. It wasn't just him, though. Rudy Giuliani, reputed to be one of the toughest prosecutors, pushed all these stories, made people nuts. Don't prosecute people for bad thoughts or negligence. We still haven't seen a single video of Real punching anyone. So this Mad Max theory versus the reality, this is what it looks like in Philly. She plays a video. There's drunk Proud Boys in the American Legion Hall doing silly initiation rituals. Proud Boys give a mock beating as he lists 5 breakfast cereals, which is hard to do. We tried to do that here. Try it at home. That was Uncle Tony. That was Mr. Robbins. Both came in. And when you heard about initiation rites, you didn't probably think of it that way. That's not violence. It's a bunch of guys goofing around. Most of these men are little. That's rude. Most of these men are little. Heavy from having drunk a lot of beer. Or a little, heavy. She says most of these men are a little heavy from having drunk a lot of beer. Most of us don't realize what's going on out there. This man comes and gets threatened for being a Trump supporter. Real pays for a hotel room for him and his family. That was in July. So says Zach is not lying to you. The government comes out here. They say this is one of the biggest investigations in history. Okay. 8 confidential human sources. We heard from one. We heard about others. Kenny from Long Island. Danny Mack. Says there are 2 issues here. One, either the FBI is really incompetent, which is true, or 2, there was nothing to report because there was no conspiracy. An investigation lasts more than 2 years, 500,000 messages, tons of videos. Dubrowski spent the last 1.5 years doing nothing but this case. But not a single message says the plan is going to take the Capitol and take it down. There's a lot of trash talk, lots of BS. There's FBI agents galore in this case. Very impressive credentials. You saw a lot more here. You saw the Zoom meeting. Tario Nordine at the top with Biggs. You saw the application form. No drugs, self-defense, will not initiate confrontations. Says there's no doubt that these people drank too much. Key to this thing was 10-man squads. Thought one guy could control 10 guys. No doubt on paper, on video, all over the case. They play a clip from Real. Says if you're just going to sit there and be an a-hole, you're not part of the planning team. Playing another video. That video of a woman with a knife getting knocked out, she says, that was pretty nasty. It's nasty. I saw it. Now, I know they're honorable men, but there is an element of trying to get you to react viscerally to this. They want you to see that and react. They're trying to get you to think, nasty video, nasty men. But that's not how the law works. It's not supposed to happen here. There was other evidence about Zach Real's 10-man fighting force. Other people are listed in this. She says again, not one of them used violence. So they put together this group of 10 people, but none of them used violence. She says theory versus reality. This is her theme. No violence, no destruction of property, no weapons. Entered through the Capitol open door. No forced entry, no alarms. Says on January 4th, there were stages. Everyone comes to the protest. That's where the laws are made. Another chat. She says they're talking about this. If we still have a plan to break off on teams, we can pick them there on the spot. What were some of the objectives agreed upon anyways? She says, big conspiracy. If people at the top don't even know what the objectives are, how is that a conspiracy? The burden is on the government, ladies and gentlemen, to prove this conspiracy and do it beyond a reasonable doubt. Real didn't meet with Biggs or Nordine. There were no phone calls with Biggs. There were no telegram messages explaining the plan. On January 6th, Real, he's there, eventually waiting to enter the Capitol. He's there with Jeff. Jeff is wearing a suit to the insurrection. What kind of an insurrection is that? She plays a video of the upper terrace just before Real enters the building. Somebody says, hey, you want to go in? Pence got evacuated? She says, now the fact that Pence is gone is not a defense, but it goes to his state of mind. What was his intent? Not one of them says, let's go in and break heads or break windows or whatever. Finley and Reel have never been inside the Capitol. It's an immense, beautiful building. And says that my client, Mr. Reel, has his master's, but you heard him talk, right? He's not the most educated man in the world. And says that he entered at 2:53. The proceedings were already recessed. So what was his intent? If he's mistaken that he was prohibited from entering, that's not intent to obstruct the proceeding. So she moves on. She's got some additional slides. She sums a lot of it up for us. Says, on January 6th, no weapons, clothes, plain rain jacket, common sneakers, no boots, no bear spray or pepper spray, lots of photos and videos. She's now saying that his voice that says F 'em, storm the Capitol, is not his. She turns over to the Telegram messages and says, you know what? The government actually had a better program. They could have told you which messages each person was responding to, but they didn't use it. They're trying to imply that all of the messages are all equally guilty. And a special agent said that they added some other functionality last year, but said regardless, it's their burden to convict Reel. If they have a better program, they've got to use it. They have an obligation not to ask you to convict Reel on the evidence if there's a better way to prove the evidence. Now, I want to ask about this smoke video, she says. I want to talk about this Pizzola smoke video. On January 7th or January 8th, she says, yeah, it's true. Zachary Reel said it's time to prepare for a Biden presidency. It's just the tip of the spear. Bertino said the Proud Boys use this, over 500,000 messages. And Zachary Reel was not anywhere near Donahoe. They stipulated that Reel was nowhere near Donahoe when he threw the water bottle. He said he'd never seen Donahoe be violent. They're talking about these other stipulations. Says Zachary Reel was nowhere near Pizzola when he broke the window. No evidence he was near that at all. And the next slide has a, quote, get out of jail free card on it from the Monopoly game. Says Bertino and Green, the two people who cooperated, they got out of jail. Green was found she says Green found God in the back of the FBI paddy wagon. We had character witnesses, John Wynn, Henry McGill. They came here at personal risk, since the Proud Boys are bad names in many circles. But they told you that my client, Zach, is an honest man. Wynn said, I love him. He came here to testify from that West Coast. McGill came from South Florida. So how did this nice guy become a violent insurrectionist? Doesn't make any sense. She's showing a photo of McGill to remind the jury, who's a black man. A rapper met in Yuma said Zach is honest and says evidence of good character alone can create reasonable doubt. It's in your jury instructions if you look. The FBI agent Nicole Miller told you she watched hundreds of videos. Never saw Reel use pepper spray, not one, not in any of them. No text or person tells you he used pepper spray. That is a body-worn camera where we saw the officer who wore it. Well, why don't they bring him to testify if he was sprayed? Why didn't they bring him in here? Good question. Says it's up to you to decide what you see here. You don't see a reaction. Pepper spray, you duck. They claim this is Mr. Reel. They claim that's his hand. Well, what's this? Looks like an arm. There's no way that's Reel's arm. The arm cannot contort that way. Looks to me like that arm is coming out as someone else's arm. What is going on after that 4 months on the last day of trial? They pull out this video and shove it in our faces. Now, I want you to think about all of his upbringing, being a Marine. I do that so you can say that, is this the same man the government is telling you about in that picture, really? A Marine, honorably discharged. They're asking you to find him guilty of seditious conspiracy. Guilty of assault because Donahoe and Pizzola did it when he wasn't around. Guilty of civil disorder. She says, I'm just begging you to apply the standard we apply in the United States before sending someone to jail. Call him a felon. Take him away from his family on this evidence. They say big deal because I don't recall. I ask you, you've got a prosecutor showing you a man you've never seen before. Not a good answer to say I don't recall. But 2.5 years ago, I submit to you, it's your decision. That is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. You've seen other videos. You see spray. You see people stabbed. There was no pepper spray recovered. And you don't need magnifying glasses to see pepper spray. Look at that arm. It looks like somebody else's arm. Now, I want to bring up these other things he mentioned about firing squads. She says the First Amendment is intertwined throughout all of this. All these messages they're introducing, I'm not here to defend what they said. Somehow, internet makes people stupider than they already are. In America, you get out in the street, you call our president all sorts of names, Supreme Court justices, politicians, and so on. It's all protected under the First Amendment. Used to be. All these counts. Judges will give you lengthy instructions. I beg you, you'll make a decision. You've sworn to apply the law, to hold the government to its burden to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. All amendments in our Bill of Rights are about protecting us from the government. I beg of you, when you go in there, look at the arguments, the facts. I can't go in there with you. Ask every one of you to be the loudmouth in the room. You can be me. Nothing in Zach Reel's life should leave you to believe the government's argument. She puts a hand on Mulroe's shoulder and says something like, he's not as bad as he seems to be. I think she's referring to Mulroe. Whoa! Oh, man. She goes up and puts her hand on his shoulder and says, he's not as bad as he seems to be. Thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen. And the attorneys are done. Carmen Hernandez says, thank you. Jury being excused for the day. Woo! So we got through 2 of those. Roger says, okay, so we've got 3 more defendants. The government's going to have a rebuttal next. Pattis comes back in, is asking about whether there will be a First Amendment instruction. Judge says yes. It's in your email. The judge says, okay, we're done for the day. We're coming back here tomorrow at 9 a.m., which means we're going to have 3 more defendants and then the rebuttal close. So the government's going to get to go again because the system hates defendants. So, woo, my friends. All right, we are making our way through closing arguments in the Proud Boys trial, day 61. Should be able to close all of those out tomorrow, and we'll be back here to do so on day 62 of the Proud Boys trial. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. We covered some good ground here. We got through a lot of closings. We know Tucker Carlson is no longer with Fox News, so I guess don't know what we're going to be watching tonight. But that is a lot to get to. And my friends, I want to see what you have to say about all of this and more from our friends at watchingthewatchers.locals.com and some of those amazing donos and super chats that came in over on YouTube and our friends on Rumble. Very much appreciate everybody supporting the show, supporting the work that we're doing here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, on YouTube, we had a couple questions come in to get us started. Hey, Steven's here, sending a sticker. Stephen M. What's up, Stephen M? Stephen Mosher sends in a nice cup of coffee. Thank you for that, Stephen. I very much appreciate you. And K. Bean says, Dear Don Lemont, please let the door hit you on your way out. Yeah, Don Lemont is also gone. Do you think that they did that just because of Tucker? They're just like, oh, man, if they got rid of that guy, we should get rid of him, too. Like anybody else, just like firing, like firing, cover through firings. Cover to fire. We also had Lance says, Rob, can you do a spot on True the Vote case? Weird Connick dropped it just after they jailed TTV to give up their source. I have big questions on that whole thing. LA arrested the CEO of Connick, then dropped the charges. Gosh, what was this one about? I vaguely remember this, Lance. True the Vote case. What was that? Gosh, yeah, True the Vote. Did they get indicted? True the Vote leaders jailed after being found in contempt. I pulled it up. Yeah, I'll take a look at it. I'm not sure where that case is at, but yeah, thank you, Lance. That's interesting. So the other one, so there's a bunch of stuff going on right now. I'll look at that one. There's also the Uhuru case that Vientikis is talking about. We also have the Trump trial. We haven't even looked into that. I don't know if that's starting tomorrow, but True the Vote. Okay. Thank you, Lance. And Lance, thank you for the very nice super chat. I'll have to take a look at that. I'm not familiar with what's going on there. I remember the name though, and I remember the prosecution. Fred says, people who put pineapple on pizza belong in prison. I am a defense attorney, and I can defend any type of crime except that. Death penalty and long prison sentence. Fast trial, death penalty. What does Trump say? Fast trial, something like that, whatever. Good to see you, Fred. Fred says the bad news, Tucker. The good news, dans les mains. Yeah, Tucker. Yeah, gosh, what a day. Good to see you, Fred. Thanks for chiming in here. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the left is very happy about Tucker, but also sad about dans les mains. Ian Mack says, did Epps' quote of "I orchestrated it" make it into the closing? No, I don't. Not yet so far. No, not yet. Although that's not in evidence. I don't think they've gotten that into evidence yet. It's too bad. They tried to subpoena Ray Epps, but they were not able to get him there. Adam M says, check on your FBI agent. They get lonely too. Well, I'm sure we have a few of them in the chat. I think they hang out here, to monitor whatever it is we're doing. We always like to say hi to the FBI agents. Hopefully you guys had a great day today. You're going to have a great, as soon as you get home, I'm sure your spouse is going to be making you some chicken nuggets and, some Kool-Aid for you to drink there and, little drink, and you have some ice cream if you eat all your chicken. Okay. So shout out to the FBI agents in the chat. Riley is here. Says, Rob, will you please opine on the matter, travesty and gravity, of the arms case, Matt Hoover, CRS? It's truly terrifying for the First Amendment and Second Amendment. Guilty of selling and possessing machine guns for a drawing, literally. So sad. Matt Hoover, CRS. Gosh, another one, man. I don't know anything about this one. Matt Hoover, CRS, Florida man, YouTube celebrity, guilty, Wisconsin gun dealer, 180,000 subscribers, been... My goodness, man. All right. Yeah, I'm going to look at that one too. Yeah, I'm going to look at that one too. Thank you, Riley. I'm not familiar with this one. Here, while we're here, just real quickly, just so everybody else can see what we're talking about. And if you're curious about this, then you can take a look at it here. It says jurors in Jacksonville machine gun trial convicted Orange Park businessman, YouTuber, guilty all counts, Wisconsin gun dealer, Friday behind bars. His attorneys asked for self-surrender. Auto key card. He sold card-shaped strips of stainless steel, etched patterns, for equipment colloquially called a lightning link that can convert a semi-auto into fully auto with a single trigger pull. Although a buyer would have to follow the etched lines with a cutting tool, prosecutors argued the cards qualified as conversion devices. Gosh, so it's like an idea, right? As long as you do not cut it out, you haven't broken the law. The trial included testimony from clients who said they had not caught the cards. A 12-count indictment finalized last month charged the men with conspiracy. Oh my gosh. All right. Yeah, we'll take a look at that. Yeah, it's just... Is it a 12-count indictment? Did this come over from the feds? Yeah, it is the feds. District Court, indictment, Middle District of Florida. Who brought this? Assistant U.S. Attorney Jackson. Okay, wild. All right, so that is an interesting one. Definitely go and support that man and his channel. What a mess. All right. Thank you, Riley, for sending that one in. I really do appreciate that. And let's see what else we have all across the other fruited plains of the internet. We're going to do another refresh here on the YouTubes. Hey, Lance sent another one in. 2 separate cases. TTV sued by Connick after Connick was charged. LA, both cases dropped before trial. Strange things. LOL. Thanks, Rob, from Lance. Yeah. Connick CEO. Okay, let me take a look at that. Yeah. All right, I've got that pulled up too. I don't know that we'll get to it on the show or we'll do a segment or anything about it, but I will definitely look at it. All right, and so that came over on YouTube. Thank you to our YouTube friends. And we're also over on Rumble. Shout out, we got Seth Covington in the house. Fairy Dance over on Rumble. Jan X over there. Users in the house. I see Dog La Azteca is in the house. Donut Mind Me's modding up over there. And thank you, Fairy Dance. User's over there. He says, Rob. User says, Rob. What's up, user? Good to see you, my man. We had a tip come in On Wims, says, I think it was to diminish Tucker's credibility, which is why Wims is saying Tucker got the boot to diminish his credibility. Well, I think they do want to come after the king. I think that they have a lot of interest in seeing conservative mainliners removed from the field. And I think this is probably going to be part of a pattern. I don't want to say that the conservative media group, media figures are under attack, but it certainly feels like they're under attack. There's a lot of movement. Look, just like we've seen the political class organize offenses, right? Offensive operations, whether it's the election, whether it's social media, whether it's, any one of these psyops, informational ops or anything. Why would they also not be putting pressure on Fox News to get rid of Tucker? They are. We played AOC. We played Chuck Schumer, right? All of that pressure coming down to bear on Fox News, on Rupert Murdoch, on all of these people. I got to imagine there are just hordes of Democrats, just like they did in 2020. They told us they did it. They wrote a whole article about it. They've got to be working to go after and take out the big people, right? And it may actually be, if you take a look at what's happening with the Daily Wire or Matt Walsh, right? You might have actual hackers and stuff going in there and trying to take out structures and take out organizations. So the warfare is, I think, only going to escalate. Tucker was the 800-pound gorilla in the room. And we talked about this on our members-only stream this morning on Locals. If they're going to take him out, I'd rather them do that right now. I'd rather him go take his 6 months or his quarter or whatever he needs to go recuperate, pray, figure out, reorganize, and come back re-energized and get back on the field for 2024 because we need him. All right, Paul Mino is on Twitter. Says, you're a masterclass in transcript dramatization today, Rob. Well done. You're a funny dude. Well, thanks, Paul. We try to keep it lively and keep it interesting. It is very serious business, obviously, but we try to spice it up a little bit. But we are pulling for the Proud Boys, man. I mean, gosh, what a close for the lawyers, for the Proud Boys, for their families, for their friends, for everybody involved in this. I mean, it's like a bomb goes off in everybody's life. And yeah, it's a lot. So we're pulling for them. Sheila is here, says, I love your show. Well, thank you, Sheila. I love that tweet. Danny McWilliams says, one you should look into is the oil company's lawsuit about the climate. Gas prices are going to go sky high. From Danny McWilliams. Supersonic Station and the Teslas are here. Tesla owner is an Asian person of color. Wow. Thanks for being here. Says the Twitter viewers are the best viewers. Supersonic Station says, what a crazy day in the news. Now I'm going to watch Closing from the Lawyer of the Land. Good to see you, Supersonic. And Clarity Constable is also over there, all over on the Twitterverse. And so that, my friends, is it for us on the day. Now, we are going back over to Locals and to our members only chat. So if you are a YouTube member, don't forget to grab the Telegram link. The Telegram link is in the community post section. If you're a YouTube member, come and join us on Telegram for the after party and join us tomorrow morning for the headlines for the morning show, which is what we do for our members only on at watchingthewatchers.locals.com or on YouTube. But before we get out of there, this is the address, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Don't forget to grab the Telegram link. Also, don't forget to get your Field of Greens at fieldofgreens.com, where you can save 15% with code Robert. The vegetables want to be eaten, and it is real organic superfood. You're going to be bursting with green energy, the good kind. So check it out, fieldofgreens.com. Don't forget to use code Robert. If you like this mind map and you want to use a mind map like this for any of your projects, I use it obviously for the show, but I use it for other things like organizing projects, keeping my ideas orderly. I use it from some of my, like my personal development stuff. I use it for all sorts of stuff. Spotlightlawyer.com/mindmap if you want to get a free account today. Thank you to the mods who mod down the fort for us. We have Vientikis Prime. I think he has game night tonight. K-Bean, Just Cause. We got Playing Hooky, Ronnie Cole, our friend Zulu, Geomancy, Zach Nichols, John Allen in the house, Janik909, Dog Digger, and Donut Mind Me, all modding down the fort for us. Big shout outs to Sleepy Dog Lee, our friend Geegum Geegum, also on locals. And then, of course, we had a belated birthday to Fred and Johnny. That was there from last week. Another belated birthday. And so that, my friends, is it for us on the day. We are done. We're going over to our after party for members. Come and join us. Otherwise, if we don't see you over there, hope to see you right back here tomorrow, because we are going to do it again, and there's going to be a lot more to get into. And I hope to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.